Number 5, in a hybrid corn research project, 200 seeds were planted. 185 of them germinated. Find the empirical probability that any particular seed of this type will germinate. So with probability, there are 3 different types. So I'm going to talk about those here. There is subjective, probability, P-R-O-B. I'm going to abbreviate. This is my abbreviation for probability, P-R-O-B with a Y. So subjective probability, an educated guess. The guess is only as good as the source. So just for example, if you were told there was a 40% chance of rain, now, me saying there's a 40% chance of rain means nothing because I'm not a meteorologist. I don't study the weather, and I don't really know unless I've watched the news. But however, a meteorologist telling you there's a 40% chance of rain says that, hey, you might want to take an umbrella. It's possible that it could rain. Sometimes it's not. And again, sometimes the guesses are all over the place. They might say that there's a 10 or 20%, and then it pours down, and sometimes it may be a 70 or 80%, and it's dry and sunny. It's just a prediction based on past experience. But you're more likely to listen to somebody in that field of profession as opposed to somebody who hasn't or is not in that field of profession. So if you see subjective, that's just a guess. And then empirical, which is the one that this question is talking about. Okay, so empirical probability is based on an experiment. So if we do an experiment, we get a probability, then that's what we say our probability is. Okay, so for example, let's say we flip a coin 10 times. All right, so if several people flip the coin 10 times, we're not guaranteed to get 5 heads and 5 tails. Okay? Some might, but if several people did, there's no guarantee that we will get 5 heads and 5 tails. You might get 4 and 6, 3 and 4, or whatnot. So let's say we did this and we got 4 heads and 6 tails. That's possible. And based on this experiment, we say the probability of getting a head is 4 out of 10, because we flipped it 10 times, 4 of them were heads. And if we reduce that, we say 2/5. Okay, so this is an example of empirical probability. They've done some experiment, they've got some results, and they're going to use that result to be the probability. Okay, and then the last type of probability is classical. So classical probability is just called theoretical probability. Okay, so it's just in theory. So for example, the probability just generally of getting a head, if we flip a coin, is 1/2, because one side is a head and there's 2 sides, heads and tails. Now, if we flip a coin twice, we're not guaranteed to get one head and one tail. We could get two heads. We could get two tails. We could get one and one, but it's not guaranteed. So what this theory says that in the long run, so let's say if I did 4 and 6, the probability of a head right here will be about 40%. And if I kept going, if I flipped it more times, let's say if I flipped it 20 times and I just kept going with these numbers, we might be up to, let's just say add 5 here. This will be 9 heads. Let's just add 5 more here. So this will be 11 tails. The probability of getting a head now is 9 over 20. And then nickels, 9 times 5 is 45. So right here we had 40%, and now we're at 45%. So basically, probability in theory says as the number of flips gets larger and larger, so let's say this was 10 flips, this is 20 flips, as we continue to get bigger and bigger, okay, the probability of getting a head or a tail is going to get closer and closer to actually 50%. It's going to get closer to that number. So that's just in theory. So these are the 3 different types of probability. Classical is what we normally use. Empirical sometimes is based on the experiment, and subjective is just a guess. Okay. So here on this problem, we want to know, find the probability that a seed will germinate. So we have 200 seeds were planted, 185 germinated. So based on these numbers, okay, from empirical, I'm going to do it right here in this little white space. So based on these numbers, probability, I'm just going to say G, that will germinate is 185 germinated out of 200. And then we can divide by 5, and that will give us 20. No, that's divided by 10 is 20. Divided by 5 is going to give us 40. And divided by 5 gives us 37. So 37 out of 40 will be the probability that it germinates. So it says integer, decimal, around the 3 decimal places. So we're going to use, because they don't want a fraction, they didn't say fraction. It says verify 185 divided by 200. Gives us 0.925, and I'm going to do the same thing. 37, what I reduced it to, divided by 40, just to see. Yeah, 0.925. So you get the same thing. So 3 decimal places, 0.925.